when the world has got you down. And
Alzheimer's sucks. It's an equal opportunity disease that chips away at everything we hold dear. And to date, there's no cure. So until there is, we continue to fight with the most powerful tool in our arsenal, love. This is Love Conquers Alz, a real and really positive podcast that takes a deep dive into everything Alzheimer's, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And now, here are your hosts, Susie Singer-Carter and me, Don Priest.
Hello, everybody. I'm Susie Singer-Carter.
And I'm Don Priest, and this is Love Conquers Alz. And this is what? This is the first show of season 3.
Da, 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 da. I told Marianne it was going to be a singing show. See?
So what's going on, Susan?
Oh, my gosh. Well, this is, first of all, thank you all for listening to Love Conquers Alz and supporting us during our hiatus. It was nice to still have the community out there and people, on our social media checking in and it's great because I hate losing touch with this community, which is so amazing and supportive and vast, and it's growing bigger every day, which is amazing because when I started in this community with my mother and her Alzheimer's, it was hard to find a group of people to just talk to, one person to talk to. So it's amazing how this has really become a movement.
And it builds and builds. Yeah, I mean, every day, even though, we hadn't put out new content in a while, and then people just keep jumping on board because I think everyone is looking for somewhere to share an experience, and hopefully we're that conduit.
Well, it's a testament to everybody sharing and talking about it. So let's keep talking. And anything else we need to talk about? Yes, I know what we need to talk about. We need to tell everybody to listen to our new podcast. We have a full season. It's called I Love Lucifer, the podcast. It's not what you think it is. It's a comedy. Like it's Bridesmaids meets American Werewolf in London meets I don't know.
So what we do in the shadows.
Yeah. It's just a fun romp. It's female driven. It's and it's really takeoff on Hollywood, and it's so much fun. And so you can find it anywhere. Listen to it on any platform you want, and but. Don't confuse it with I Love Lucifer, which is another podcast, which is not our podcast. You can listen to it, but listen to ours. It's ours is a story.
It is I Love Lucifer, the podcast. Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah, so much fun, such great acting, right. Singing, dancing, all kinds of stuff on a podcast. Who would have thunk? Anyway, so Don, tell us about our first guest of season 3.
All right. Well, Marianne Sciucco is not a nurse who writes, but a writer who happens to be a nurse. A lover of words and books, she dreamed of becoming an author, but became a nurse to avoid poverty. In over 20 years of nursing, she has cared for hundreds of dementia patients. But she never gave up on her dream, and her two worlds met in her poignant novel Blue Hydrangeas, an Alzheimer's love story. But soon after, she started living her own story when her stepfather was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Her caregiving journey led to the creation of AlzAuthors, a global community of authors and readers whose lives have been touched by Alzheimer's and dementia. And we are so thrilled to have her here today. So let's say hello to Marianne Sciucco. Hello, Marianne.
Hi, Marianne.
Hi, Dawn. Hi, Susie. Thanks so much for inviting me to your show.
It's a pleasure. I've been following you on social media for a while and wondering who is this woman? Who is this grand aggregator of all things Alzheimer's? I love it, and it resonated for me.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, no, it resonated for me because I'm always looking for whatever people are writing about, in this genre. And when we made our film, My Mom and the Girl, I thought just what people need, another movie about Alzheimer's. But guess what they do? Guess what? Who knew? And the fact that you have this location that people can go to, and if they're looking for information, of something that will resonate with them, like this lady has it all right there. You don't have to go, on a search mission. It's right there at All's Authors, right? So
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
And it's not just practical information; it's emotional information and support. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, sure. All's Authors is a global community of authors writing about Alzheimer's and dementia from personal experience. And right now we have over 300 authors who have contributed to our site. Each one of them has written either a book primarily or a blog or both about their experience to help other people who are currently on the journey. And one of the things we learned, being lovers of books, the founders thought people would be excited to find books to read, but what we learned was that caregivers are just sometimes too busy to sit down and read. So we ended up developing our podcast. So we do have a podcast where we interview the authors as well. And on our blog every week, we post a story from our new author of the week with their book, and they tell you about their journey and how they came to write their story. And each piece has some type of inspiration or hope or advice for readers. So you can get a little piece of that every week to help you keep going.
That's awesome. I want to, before we're gonna dive deep into your story, which is really very interesting that you took that route of writing Blue Hydrangeas and then it becomes your life, right? And so I found that very fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. But I was thinking about it when you were talking about All's Authors and what information isn't out there that people haven't touched on that you think might be necessary that hasn't been explored in this world of dementia, Alzheimer's?
Yeah. So what I think is easier for people to find books about like the nuts and bolts of caregiving. But what we found is people are more interested in learning other people's stories.
Right.
Because then they know that if this person made it through, then I can too. So that's where the stories provide hope, rather than somebody giving you a list of things to do.
Is there a need for certain stories that you haven't aggregated? Have you noticed a lack of stories, say, from the Asian community? Is there a lack of stories that speak to children? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah. We have a lot of children's books in our collection. But what we don't have is the diversity of voices, which we look for. So we can only feature the books that are being written. So people need to write those stories.
That's great to know because, you know, we have interviewed people from the Asian community, obviously women of color, men of color, and there's, you know, every community comes with its own challenges, and they're they're unique to those communities. So there you go. Whoever's listening, if you're if you're a diverse writer, we need more stories that open up those doors and pull the curtains back for other people in that community.
You must have found over your 20 years of nursing that you've come across all types of diversity as far as the people that you care for, and obviously, and then you're probably dealing with their families. And
yes.
You obviously notice there is a difference between, you know, obviously it's different experiences. And so what has touched you, or what have you found to be some of the not main differences, but some of the differences between dealing with people from different diverse backgrounds?
One of the major differences is economics. That can really give people very, very different experiences depending on what resources that they might have to care for their loved one. It's huge. And everybody's entitled to good care. So it's hard sometimes to arrange that when people don't have the resources. Or family dynamic is huge because, you know, not everybody has a family nearby who's willing and capable to pitch in. There's a lot that goes on with that. And then you have all the different cultural differences, language barriers as well, especially if you're trying to hire paid caregivers and they don't speak your language. And it's very disconcerting for a person with dementia to be in an environment where when they don't understand the language.
Oh God, yeah. I wanted to hear your trajectory in terms of you started as a lover of literature and writing and story, and in order to, like any artist, you have to support your love, financially. So you went into the nursing industry, and you found your niche in elder care, in dementia, caring with dementia, people with dementia, correct? And so how did that story begin? And then, and how did you stay in it for that long? And obviously you found that it was a good fit. Talk about that, if you would.
I was very fortunate when I went into nursing. I was 29, I think. I was like at a crossroads, needing to find something else to do with my life because the writing thing wasn't working out. So I decided I wanted to do something that would help people, and at the time there was a nursing shortage in the United States. So I thought, I wonder if I could do that. I don't know. Why don't I get a job as a nursing assistant someplace and see if I like it? So I was fortunate because I ended up working in a very nice nursing home right outside of Boston that was in a wealthy community and very well staffed, and I was spoiled because when I worked I only had 9 patients, and I thought it was terrific. And they put me in the dementia unit. They had a floor for people who were like end stage, later stages dementia, and it didn't bother me at all. I loved it there. I had a good time. I put in a lot of overtime. I always worked when they asked me to. And so then I did pursue nursing, and I moved to New York because I met my husband, and that's what he was. So I relocated and went to nursing school in New York and worked in the hospital setting for a long time. Became a case manager, and then I was helping with families navigate the healthcare system with their loved one and trying to set up services and education training for them, nursing home placement, home care, all of that, insurance, help them with the insurance, Medicaid, all that stuff. So I learned a lot about elder care primarily, and then dementia care too. And then I ended up leaving that to go into college health, which is where I am now. So now I have a completely different base of clientele because my so-called patients are now students in college, so they're very young. They're young. We don't worry about dementia too much. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting also as a young woman, of 29, that you would venture into that community and just go, yeah, this is good. I like it. And you connected, and it was rewarding. And that's rare because, for me, I didn't know a thing about dementia. I didn't know a thing about Alzheimer's until it really hit our family. I mean, I knew the stereotype of it. I knew that, the broad strokes, and I think I had met a couple of people, friends of my mom's, that had parents who had it, but it seemed very benign. It was like, oh, hi, who's you? Have we met? Yes, we have, and that's all I thought it was. Who knew how deep it was, right? And it can be, it's absolutely daunting. So for someone of your age, I mean, your peers must have thought you were a little, like out there.
They did.
Yeah, I'm sure they did, because I mean, there still is a stigma, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I had one of my aunts whom I loved dearly. She had Alzheimer's. So I was familiar with her and visiting with her in the facility where she lived and seeing what was going on in there, but didn't really know anything. And when I first started working at this facility I worked at, when I went on my job interview, they gave me a tour of the building. And then as we passed the door to go upstairs to the 3rd floor, the person touring me said, well, that's the 3rd floor. That's where we have the dementia patients, but we're not going to go up there. So I'm like, oh, all right. I didn't think anything of it. We continued, and then I worked there for a few weeks or months, and people would say, oh, you never want to work up there. If they make you go up there, it's terrible. You're not going to have a good night. So I was like, oh boy, what's going on up there? And then one night they said to me, you need to go upstairs. We're short of staff. We need you to go upstairs. So I went upstairs and I'm going, oh my God, what's going to happen to me up here? What's happening? And you could hear the people as you're climbing higher on the stairs. You can hear the noise. It was a noisy unit.
Yep.
And I went in there and I worked and I said, this is a blast. I love this place. One thing that they have their own challenges. End-stage dementia patients they present their own challenges, which are pretty practical, but they don't complain. So when you're with them, you can enjoy them, and they're not demanding, and like other people would be.
You're
If
so
you're
right,
a nurse in the
Marianne.
hospital, people ringing the bell, constantly calling the nurse, I need this, get me that, where's this, when is this, call the doctor, and, you go crazy running in and out of a room or responding to somebody, but
You are so right.
Not with this crowd.
You're so right. My mother is in a facility. She's been, she has a room she shares, and we do a Zoom every week. My mom is in her end stages of dementia, Alzheimer's now, and you really see the true human being once all those filters are gone. There's no social pretense. There's nothing. It's like that. It's who they are. It's as they were born is who they are. And my mom is a love bug, and always had a great sense of humor, and doesn't have a handle on her, communication skills in terms of words anymore. But you can communicate with her. You can make her laugh, and she's right there with you. But her roommate, it's like, does not have dementia, and all we can hear is her complaining and this and yelling and this. And it's so funny because you just described my mother's room. Get out of here. I need another blanket. I'm hungry. When's he coming? Come on, let's go. And my mother will look over and go, so you're so right. It's true. You're so right. You're so right.
But they can be a problem too when if they can get out of hand or whatever. So
for sure. No, it's not easy no matter how you look at it. But I love it. I have such a warm spot for that community, and I just know by bringing in other friends and family into that community, like the change, like from when they first enter a facility like that, and you can see the stress and the anxiety of their, not knowing what to do and how to deal with it. And now they walk in and it's like, we're all pros at it. We all get it. We all love it. And we look forward to it. Now, that's why we have these conversations, so we can let people know that it's just part of life, and that, there's good things to be found, like you enjoying it, like actually enjoying being up there and going, this is awesome.
Oh yeah, I'd stay. They'd say, can you stay and do a double shift? Oh yeah, I'll stay. I remember those people, and it was like 30 years ago, but I remember them, their faces, their names, different things about them. They made a huge impact on me.
How do you juggle getting, the emotional part as far as getting too close or not getting too close, and how do you navigate that?
That's hard, especially when you're new at it, because, like, I didn't even realize that people would pass away.
Yeah. That
I would care for somebody, and when the next day I went to go to work, that person was not there anymore. And I remember there was this one man, and I used to like to help him, and other people didn't like him I don't know why. I thought he was very sweet. He was very intelligent, so that might have been part of the problem. He was kind of like an egghead kind of a person. But we got along great, and he said to me, will you do me a favor and tell the people at the front desk that I won't be coming in tomorrow? So I said, okay. I thought he was talking about work, because they fixate on work. Mm-hmm. And the next day I went to work, they said that he had passed away. Oh, wow. But he knew. He must have known that he said that.
He was checking out. He was checking out.
Oh. Yeah, so it was sad. I was so sad. But then again, you have to realize that, people are there because they're not going to get better.
Right.
But I couldn't help having my favorites and having,
Me too.
People that I loved.
Me too, Marianne. I get attached. I've gotten very attached, and they've become part of my life. I tell their stories all the time. I talk about them. I mean, people that, if you've listened to our podcast, there's some very special people that have impacted my life immensely. And it's interesting. One of the women that my mom's facility before COVID, I just loved her. She was, in her mid 90s, stunning woman, gorgeous, full of life. So happy when I would show up with my daughters. We always sing. My mother's a singer, and we'd sing, and she'd go, "Oh, Susie, don't leave yet. Sing more." And just wonderful human being. And one day, this is before COVID, I was visiting my mom, and she was outside in her wheelchair, and the nurse was talking to her, and then the nurse went in, and she was out there, and I got this weird vibe from her, and so I went up to her and I said, "Ruth, are you okay?" And she was clearly having an anxiety attack. She was not, she was just, which was rare. I never saw her other than being completely fantastically, there, present, happy. And she said, I just don't want to die. And I said, "Well, you're not going to die anytime soon, because I love you, and you better be here every time I come, because I look forward to seeing you. You're fantastic." And she said, "Really?" I said, "Yes, really. I love you. I love you." And she said, "Oh, thank you." And it stayed with me so much, her anxiety. And during COVID, she passed away. I didn't get to see her. I'll start crying, but I didn't get to see her to say goodbye. And, and I know she didn't have dementia, and that was the cruelty of COVID, is because it isolated people. And so I'm sure that she just was isolated and was one of those victims that just couldn't handle the isolation, but that, I mean, it affects me very much. And I probably couldn't tell you her last name, but she's part of my dementia family, So I can only imagine someone who's has it as a vocation like you, that it takes the toll.
Oh, yeah, sure does. And then it ended up happening to me when my stepfather was diagnosed. So that was just like another crazy thing, because I wasn't even thinking about that. It never crossed my mind that would happen. And then when I started noticing he was just not right, and people would call me or send me emails and tell me that something was going on and something happened, and I had to get involved, and I was just stunned by the whole thing. You'd think that being a nurse and working in that population, you'd be able to pick it out, but I didn't, and it was probably just denial.
Right.
Yeah,
that was certainly something
my
mother didn't want that to happen.
Yeah, you don't.
No,
want
my
to
mom,
see it.
she was devastated because her sister had it. So she would say, "Please don't give me Alzheimer's. Please don't give me Alzheimer's." She would pray. Mm-hmm. And then it was him. It's kind of like, and he had no children, so it became, our responsibility and my responsibility to manage his affairs, which I took on.
Yeah. And what are the differences between caregiving, in a professional manner, and now you're doing it for somebody who's part of your family? What are those differences, and how do those manifest?
Yeah, it's interesting, because when you're a professional, you just tell people what to do, and then when you have to do it, you realize how infuriating it is and how dysfunctional the whole system is when you're trying to accomplish all of these different tasks that you have to take care of, especially when somebody needs to be placed in memory care, and the financial piece, and getting, safeguarding funds so that my mother doesn't end up destitute, and getting Medicaid for him. And at the same time, she had problems, so setting up systems for her too, and calling and trying to find a bed in a nursing home that she would accept, and trying to find home care people to take care of her. I mean, it sounds easy when you give somebody a list and say, you need to do this, 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 and this, and then you start trying to make phone calls and run around. It takes so much time and energy, and constantly hitting roadblocks. I mean, crazy, crazy things that I encountered. One I remember clearly is he had some retirement funds in this account. It was one of the big companies, and I had to call them and they wouldn't accept the power of attorney because he needed to complete it on their paperwork. And they couldn't understand why he couldn't
Jesus.
do that.
That's
And I'm like, but he has dementia. He cannot understand papers. He legally cannot sign papers. Oh, but we need him to sign these papers. You need to bring him the paper. I'm like, but I already have paper that was done by the lawyer. And it went round and round and round. Finally, I was so upset. I realized, because your mind is muddled, I'm like, who do I know that has this company? And I'm like, I do. I have the same thing. So I called my person and explained the situation to my broker or whatever she was. And she took care of it in like one phone call. But I went round and round with these people like 3 times. He needs to sign the power of attorney. That's, their paper. I said, why didn't you make him sign that when he took out this account? I don't understand. I never heard of such a thing.
And
Well,
imagine
there you go.
somebody who doesn't have, imagine somebody who doesn't have your experience, who's completely in the dark on all this.
But that's the
and that's
well,
why
you're
what
clueless.
Yeah, that's systemic though. That's the systemic problem that we have is that, we're not
It is.
educated in growing older or how to care for our elders. So, when it hits you like a ton of bricks and you're in it, you're thrown into it and you're in, a state of desperation more or less. And you are grasping for information, and the organization that you go to that like a financial organization that isn't schooled on it, doesn't know anything about it. Their rules are, made for people that are corpus mentis. They're not made for people that have dementia, and they don't understand it. It's not accounted for. I went to court 3 times to help my mom to get power of attorney, just to share it. I won't go into all the details, but I had no standing as her I was her conservator, a person, but had no standing in court to protect her financially. And so the irony of all that is just it's so exhausting for the caregiver.
Exactly.
It's exhausting. It burnt me out, and I am hard to burn out.
Yeah, but you don't have time. Like, you might be working, so you're on your lunch break, and you think you're going to make a quick call, and you're on hold for 40 minutes, and then somebody finally gets on. You have to explain to them, and then they patch you into somebody else, and then the call drops. And so now it's time to go back to work, and nothing was accomplished. And then they have to do it again tomorrow.
Exactly,
And you just keep doing and going crazy.
Yeah. So no, it is the bane of every caregiver is the systemic issues. The community is grand, but it's the outside of our community it's just they're clueless as to what is really going on, and the larger that our senior citizen population grows, and it's growing exponentially, we're going to have a coming to Jesus conversation because everyone is faced with this at some point, at some time in their life, whether it's whether it's themselves or someone that they love. We all will face it. It just is a fact. Don't you agree, Marianne?
Oh, yeah. But there's no escaping it one way or the only way to escape it is to be like my dad and drop dead at 45. Have to worry about elder problems. I always use that as like, well, at least I didn't have to worry. He didn't have to worry about having Alzheimer's because he didn't live long enough. But
yeah, my dad too. My dad died at 46 in a plane accident. So, but had a fantastic, a big life. He packed it in. So did
mine.
Yeah,
my
a huge life. So you think, wow, yeah, well, that's a whole nother conversation, about life. But being a caregiver, I love it. First of all, I love your spirit. Just want to tell you that I love your perspective on life. You're very refreshing and just sturdy as hell. I just love it. I love it that you well, anybody that would make their, would find enjoyment in that room on the 3rd floor is a friend of mine. I think that's, I love it. I admire that. Yeah, no, that's.
I think about going back there, but I think I'm too old.
Nah. Nah.
Oh, please. Oh, please. It's a number. It's a number, Marianne. Oh, you can't lift.
So
Yeah.
at what point did you say, okay, a book needs to be written about this? What was it? One thing? Was it just an aggregate of all your experiences? But at one point you said, I'm writing a book.
Yeah. Blue hydrangeas, which was before your stepdad was diagnosed, before it hit you personally. So talk about that. What was that inspiration?
Yeah, I always wanted to write a book. It was my life's dream. And it's one of those things you always put, I'd have starts and stops, but never really worked out on anything. I had a moment where I had a near-death experience in 2001 where I almost drowned in the ocean.
Oof.
So, yeah, it was 2001 July. Then we had 9/11 after. So I was thinking to myself, you really need to get your act together, try to achieve some goals in your life, because you don't know how long you're going to live. Like I said, my dad died at 45. So I said, I'm going to start writing that book. But I didn't know what I wanted to write about. And I started a story. Came up with an idea. I started writing, and then it didn't really go anywhere. But one day when I was at work, I met this woman who had Alzheimer's, and she completely captivated me. She was charming, very, very beautiful, funny. She was with her husband. And the thing about them is they had driven from Florida to New York all by themselves. And he was very frail, and her mind was just not there. And he was physically frail, but somehow they managed to take this trip safely. And then after they got back home, she broke her pelvis. So that's why she was in the hospital. She was supposed to go to rehab. And when I came into the picture, I was just filling in for somebody else that day. I wasn't invested with these people, but I decided to go into the room and say hello. And I met the son, and we talked about her discharge the next day. And her son said, can I drive my parents to the facility tomorrow? I don't want my father to take my mom. Is that all right? I said, yeah, that's fine. That's no problem. And then later on, after I went home, I kept thinking about them. And I said to myself, well, I wonder what would happen if the son, somehow he doesn't get there in time and the husband takes off with the wife. Where will they go? What will they do? And so that's how I came up with the whole story about blue hydrangeas, because that's what happens in that story. And it was made up thinking not just about this particular couple, but many other couples where the husband was the caretaker, the caregiver. And I knew a lot of couples like that, because usually when you think of caregiver, you think of a woman, right? A mother caring for her children, or a daughter caring for her parents. But I knew that there were men out there that were doing a great job taking care of their wives. I decided to make it from his perspective, the story. And then one thing led to another, and before I knew it, I had a whole book.
It's interesting. Beautiful. It's like, the two of my favorite stories are come from that perspective, which is rare. It's away from her. I don't know if you've seen that film, but it's one of my favorite films. I think it really identifies the truth of Alzheimer's within a marriage, and then of course The Notebook also came from the male perspective, right? And I found both those stories to be the most palpable for me, and they resonated the most. And when you were talking about the dynamic of the couple that inspired your at least the spark of your story, it so reminds me of my mom and my stepfather, because my stepfather was 12 years older than my mother. And my mother physically has always been, fit and a dynamo, and, full of piss and vinegar, and just a big, she's a rocket. And my stepfather was getting frailer and frailer. He couldn't hear good. He couldn't see good, but his memory was like a steel trap. So the two of them together made almost a whole human. But he would drive, but couldn't see and hear. My mom couldn't remember, but so she'd say, turn left. He'd go, what? Turn left. I heard you. Stop yelling at me. What street is this? I don't know. I can't remember.
My
Same
mother and
thing?
her husband, they were the same way. She was 9 years older than him, and she never
Oh,
drove,
wow.
and she couldn't hear, and he couldn't. So they got lost a lot, and that was like one of the telltale signs that something wasn't right because they would
Yeah.
just get like lost. I mean, for hours and highways and states
Wow.
they didn't plan to visit.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
my God.
It's so scary. Oh my God. I have to read your book now. I haven't had a chance to read it. I'm going to read it. It sounds lovely, and yeah, it sounds lovely. I love that kind of story. And so after you wrote the book, then what made you decide to launch this website, the AlzAuthors website?
So when I started out, I knew nothing about book publishing and marketing or anything. So I had this book now. What I did was I joined an organization called Clean Indie Reads, and it was on Facebook, and it's a support group for authors, and we would help promote each other's books on social media and do newsletters and blogs and whatever. And I did that for a little while, and then I started thinking about it, and I said, I wonder if I could have a group like this for people who've written books about Alzheimer's and dementia. I wonder if that would work. So I contacted a woman I knew who had written to me because she loved my book, and then she wrote her own book, asked me to read it for her, which is kind of like, oh God, that's really kind of a tricky thing to do because what if you don't like the book? It's puts you in a bad spot. But I agreed to read her book, and it was excellent. So I was pleased about that. So I wrote to her and I said, I was wondering if you might be interested in working together to help raise awareness of Alzheimer's and dementia and to promote our books. And she was thrilled, and she was gung ho from the very first moment. And then I said, do you know anybody else? And she said, oh, I know this other woman. Now, she didn't know this other woman. She just had, like me, had read her book, and they swapped books, and they liked each other's books and communicated online, but they weren't friends. They didn't know each other at all. They lived on different parts of the country. But she says, oh, yeah, I know her. Maybe I'll give her a call and see if she might want to help, too. Well, her first reaction was, why would I want to help somebody else sell their book? But then we were talking about it and was saying, but when you help, we help each other. So instead of you talking about your book, you talk about somebody else's book, somebody else talks about your book, and then it goes on and on like that.
Right.
And we build a platform. So we said, okay, let's give it a try. So for 1 month in 2015, in June, it was Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. We said, okay, we're going to promote each other's books on our blogs and on our social media. And we created, graphics. We came up with the hashtag AlzAuthors. We started to do that. And it was fun. And then in November is Caregiver Appreciation Month. So we said, well, let's do it again. And we really had a good time doing that. We expanded it. Now we got another author involved. We had other authors involved. There were really 5 when we started. And then again, when June was coming around again, I said, why don't we do this again? But why don't we start our own website, our own blog? Instead of having us posting on our own personal blogs, we will create a blog for AlzAuthors. We had already created the Twitter page. And they were like, okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to get a new author every day in June. We're going to promote a different book. So we had to get all these people that we didn't know to agree to write an essay or a blog post for us, which they did. And we did it. It was Monday through Friday, so there were 20 posts that month, and we promoted them on social media, started Facebook. And we loved what we were doing, but we loved each other is what happened. Is we good friends, like sisters, like we call each other our Alzie sisters. And we ended up putting together a team of 5 people who have been the management team since 2016. And now we have 300 authors, and we have a huge website. We have more than 300 books, resources, podcasts, traveling libraries, the bookstore. Now we have people doing guest blog posts for us on topics that we select, and other things that are coming. We did a virtual event, which was fantastic. We had 5 people living with Alzheimer's early onset, for the most part, come together on Zoom and have a chat, and gave us a lot of good information and insight. It was unbelievable.
That is
And
so fascinating.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. We
Yeah.
we were fortunate to interview at the end of last season 2 people that are on early onset, and I find it so fascinating and I think that's so important to have more people in the early stages talk about it and talk about what they're going to do with it, how they're going to really take on the journey and be muses and inspiration for all of us. There's just so many people out there that are open to talking about it, because before it was, I remember literally like shielding my mom from people. I thought I was protecting her, but I was really, it was me. I thought it was, I thought I was protecting her dignity, but no, I was embarrassed a little bit. I didn't know how to handle it.
I think
just
keeping
didn't.
those, and keeping those conversations, I mean, not keeping them, starting them, because I think people do feel very alone. Both, I think, when you find out if you have it, and then the people who are who are their loved ones, you feel alone, you feel isolated, you feel like, this is, I think you just literally feel like there's a spotlight on you, and that nobody else will understand. And I think for so long there weren't these outlets. There
Right.
weren't things like what you've created, which is amazing. And I think that's so important to create this community, because as we know, the caregivers are the ones who suffer as far as they die, at an unbelievable rate. And I think it's because everything is kept inside. And I think so to have these outlets is so important and vital for everybody,
And
not only the person who has it, but for
Yeah.
everyone.
And also I just wanted to touch on one thing about people with early onset who are opening up their experience to the rest of us and sharing it. It's so important because, once somebody loses their memory, it's too late for us to really ask questions to them. We can't say to them, what would you like? Is this the way you want to have it? What would make you the happiest, right? What can I do to make this journey for you the best? So I think doing that is such a gift. Congratulations on doing that. I wish I had seen your announcement for that. I would have jumped on that. That's really
it's
powerful.
recorded. You can find it. It's on our
is.
YouTube channel.
Oh, good.
Oh,
What is
great.
your YouTube channel?
Excellent.
It's AlzAuthors. Everything is
AlzAuthors.
AlzAuthors.
Okay. Okay, great.
So you have these 300, or so, books and all these. Is there anything that is just an overall, something that's a commonality that you hear that says this is like the core thing, that this is all a common message that you get from all of them? There may not be, but I'm just wondering if anything comes to mind.
Well, what you had said before about feeling isolated and alone, like a lot of people feel that way, but they're not alone because there are so many others. But people don't have the time to reach out to find out that there are other people they can talk to, whether it's at a support group in their community or something online, or even, just nowadays, if I mention something about Alzheimer's, dementia, most likely the person I'm speaking to has already had an experience. So people are trying to hide, like, behind the stigma, like you said, Susie, and maybe protect themselves or protect their loved one. But it's so pervasive now that most people will say, oh, yeah, my mom has that, or my grandmother had that. So you would find a kindred spirit there. And at least somebody was, we even talk about that amongst ourselves and the management team, is that, one thing, everybody here knows what we're talking about. Like, if you mention it, the person, they know your whole life. Just when you sit there and say, well, I'm taking care of my mother, she has Alzheimer's, then people are like, oh yeah, they know exactly what you're talking about. You don't have
It's haiku, yeah. Right?
So that's a very common thing. And most people who have written the book they wish they had when they were going through their experience.
That's the beauty. Out of coal comes diamonds. I mean, that is the truth.
One of the points that I wanted to make about the authors in our organization is that the majority of them are not professional writers. This is the only book they've written. They will not write another one. It's their story. And they manage to tell it and to present it in a very professional, meaningful way. They're the real deal. They're not some, psychologist, some nurse or doctor or social worker or whatever, bringing their own little professional agenda to it. It's not something that they write, because they've written, some of them have written other books, and then they decided to tell this story. Most of them, it's like one and done. And their books are very powerful. And these are people, they have something to say. And they manage to say it. It's important.
Yep.
It's, those shared story. Sharing the stories. It's what, first of all, it's therapeutic as just to the writer. That just getting it out there. Did you find that when you wrote your book that it was like therapy?
Yeah, it is. It's a therapy. It's cathartic for the author, and it also helps to honor and memorialize their loved one.
Yes, indeed.
And some people, they write the story so that other family members will know what happened. So, the grandchildren who maybe weren't present or, they were too young to understand. When they read that later, they can see what went on, what happened. It's good family information.
Yeah. Well, it's also it's very valuable. It's valuable because just the nuances of everybody's story, those nuances are what are important, because those are the things that people search out to feel not alone. Are those things that and the more honest the stories are, the more they resonate and the more valuable they are. Like the short film, I don't know if you've had a chance to see My Mom and the Girl, but at first I thought just the world needs is another Alzheimer's movie, but I knew the little story that I took of my mom was it was a large story, right? It was just, it packed a lot of messages in that story, in that event that happened. And I realized it was a joyful event and it was powerful, and it really framed Alzheimer's in a way that was unique. I realized eventually, and so I think the books and films and any way that you can share your experience, it's valuable. It's valuable, and there's room for more. There really is.
And one thing we found that when making the movie, because we thought it was a very specific story. And we thought, who's gonna, no one's gonna relate to. Not gonna. And we found after, doing the festival circuit and talking to the audiences after, and it was like, oh my God, you told my story. We're like, how did this story tell your story? Because they found that common thread that, you think that, there is such a commonality, and that is what brings us all together and gives us that support. So, yeah, so what you're doing is great because people are able to do that, and you are bringing people together that way, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's certainly our goal.
Yeah, I love it. So what's your next big thing, or what would you like to see happen?
We want to do more video events like the one we did with the 5 people living with early onset, because we have so many people we can count on that would be available to share their stories. So I wanted to do one. We have a lot of physicians in our group, so we could have one just with physicians to talk, ask the doctor questions that you're not getting answers to. Or, caregiving for your mother. Somebody, have a group of people who are caring for their moms or caring for their spouse, or sandwich generation, people who are caring for kids and parents at the same time. And I wanted to do one with using art as a therapy in dementia care, which is a really terrific thing. And I have at least 4 or 5 authors in our organization that are doing that.
That's
we have a lot of resources. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. And then on the other side, we have 2 audiences. This is like where we always get caught up, because there are actually 2 audiences. We have the caregivers, but then we have the authors. So we want to do something for our authors. Now, the reason why we have so many books, or why there are so many books available now on this subject, is due to self-publishing.
Yes.
Because a lot of these books would not have been published if they had to go through traditional publishing. Not because they're not good or worthy of it, but because there's just, it wouldn't have happened. So a lot of the books are self-published, but the authors, they're not professional authors or publishers or book marketers, so they don't know what to do. And once they have their, box of books that they bought from the printer, and how do I get my book out there? So we work with them to train them and teach them methods to get their book into the hands of the readers that need it. So those are it's a two-pronged effort right now. And we're trying to raise some money. We always need, like any organization, funds just to keep the website running, because every day it gets bigger. Every week we add pages to it, so it gets pretty heavy. So we're looking to maybe get some grants or maybe get some funding. If anybody out there has monies that they want to give to a good cause, we would be a good cause.
Yes, they would. Yeah, they would. I would love to have you back to talk about how publishing and how you can do that. I think that would be a great, just a topic on its own in terms of, and we'll try to, for people that are really just doing their one and done, because I think that, some people might think, oh, who's going to publish me? How do I do it? I don't have the wherewithal. I just know I have a story to tell. And from a caregiver's perspective, that would be a great conversation, a full episode to talk about that. And maybe you could come back and do that, because I love that. Yeah.
Actually, I teach classes in self-publishing schools where I live, so I have the whole presentation already prepared.
Oh, well, we're good. Okay, Marianne, that's it. You're done. We're going to do it. We're going to do that for sure, because I think for caregivers, how to publish your story as a caregiver, because, people who aren't as, as courageous as you, because you are one courageous gal, and you have a lot of spunk, as Ed Asner would say, right? She has a lot of spunk. So you are, but not everyone is like that, and that's okay. So that's why you're great as a good role model to help people get their story out from inside.
And I certainly like to help too.
That's a gift. You're a gift.
Help a lot.
Absolutely.
You're a true gift. No, you are. Thank you.
So is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to say or talk about, or, a final message? Anything? And if not, that's fine too.
No, I'd just like to reiterate that you are not alone. And that's one of our mottos at AlzAuthors. And we have another motto, is that there will be life after caregiving, and it will be good. Because I know a lot of people become so despondent, thinking this is all their life is. It's never going to get any better. Life is passing me by in these years of caregiving. It's so demanding and consuming. But in the end, it comes to a natural conclusion, and then you will rebuild your life, and it will be good.
Right.
And you will have been a better person for it.
Oh, yeah.
You will, and you'll have a great story to tell.
100%.
Tell your story.
And I have a new motto that I've coined, that for people that are dealing with people with memory loss, and that is that memories are so yesterday. They really are, and they're not the end all, be all, because we put a lot of value on memory, and when people lose their memory, we minimalize their value as human beings, but that's not true. Children come into the world without a lot of memories, and they're still valuable, and as is our elders community that have memory loss. They're still valuable, and they're actually very good teachers, because they teach us how to live in the moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Put that very well. That's a good thought.
Yeah. So anyway, Marianne, thank you so much. I'm glad we finally got to do this. Thank you for kicking off our season 3.
Thank you.
You are a gift, and we were going to definitely have Marianne back. So if you have a book inside of you that you want to get out, we'll keep in contact with us. Follow us on social media, and follow Marianne as well. AlzAuthors.
Yeah, and as we always say, love is powerful, love is contagious, and love conquers all. And we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Gotta do is sing a
Bye-bye.
song.